Dr. Hovind, I love your doctoral thesis. I've torn it to pieces with house and gaffle. I can't remember when I last pissed myself laughing. It's a good thing the thesis mopped the piss off the floor.
Welcome to part 64 of this read-through and peer review of Kent Hovind's doctoral dissertation, which was published on wikileaks.org on December 9th, 2009. If you've not yet seen the previous parts in this series, then I recommend that you go back and see those first, as in this episode I will be starting off exactly where I finished in the last. In the last episode, Kent started talking about Darwin again. He continues in this episode. Over to you, Kent. Toward the end of the 19th century, it was extremely difficult to combat this teaching of evolution. Archaeological finds were not complete, and Darwin claimed that there were thousands of intermediate species between the major kinds that we find today. He said that it was a matter of time before these missing links were dug up. Yes, Kent, I think the field of science that you're referring to is not, in fact, archaeology. It is, in fact, paleontology. The two are rather different. In any case, the field of paleontology was only in its infancy back in Darwin's day. In any case, in reality, Darwin has indeed been proved right. But do go on. It has been 130 years now, and the missing links are still missing. Really, Kent, what you're talking about here are transitional species. There are a great many transitional species known to science. You only have to visit any reasonable museum, and we're not talking about creation museums, obviously. No, we're talking about proper museums, and you'll see them in great abundance. Some of them are actually quite famous. I'll name Archaeopteryx as one example. As regards to missing links, well, when you find one transitional species between species A and species B, for instance, you now no longer have just one missing link. You now have two. The missing links on either side of the transitional species and their original species, species A and species B. The theory predicts this, and to be honest, it's common sense. But anyway, I believe that the Earth is young, and Darwin's theory is not only unscientific, it is absolutely stupid. Yes, Kent, and we all long since stopped taking any notice of the crap that you believe. But anyway, to believe that all of this complicated life in this complicated universe came about just by the random shaking of molecules demands an awful lot more faith than I have. Not really, Kent. It just demands an awful lot more intelligence. But carry on. I believe that the Earth was created in 6 literal days, not eons or epochs of time like the Living Bible says in the notes given in Genesis 1. It says that each day was a period of time. There is no evidence of that, and Ken Taylor needs to re-examine the evidence for that. Yes, Ken, I believe that he does. I also believe that if he re-examined the evidence properly and came to the correct conclusions, then you would have a book that resembles a modern biology or geology textbook rather than a Bible. I mean, we are talking about removing all the erroneous bullshit in there, aren't we, Kent? But then again, those are just my thoughts. I believe that the current teaching of evolution that is going on in our public schools and public universities has spawned a great number of social evils. Really, Kent? I bet you're going to bring up communism or some other bullshit like that, aren't you? Oh, yes, you are. For instance, communism is a direct offshoot of evolution. I was wondering when you was going to bring that up again. We haven't had it for the last few pages. Do carry on. If a frog turns into a prince instantaneously, we call that a miracle or a fairy tale. Yes, Kent, because it is. There isn't a scientific mechanism by which a frog could instantaneously turn into a prince. But if that frog turns into a prince very slowly, taking 300 or 400 million years to make the transition, we will teach that in our universities as scientific fact. Actually, Kent, we won't. What we actually do teach is that the common ancestor of both the prince and the frog will eventually evolve into the prince, and conversely into the frog. But once again, there is no evolutionary, no scientific mechanism for turning the frog into a prince. It must be costing you a fortune in straw to keep coming up with all these straw men. Anyway, let me give you just a few evidences that the Earth is young. What? Again, Kent? Isn't that what you've been doing for the last few pages? Isn't that exactly what you said several pages ago? But we'll let you carry on. But only if you promise not to keep veering wildly off topic. First of all, the coral reefs that are growing off the coast of Australia is growing at a certain rate. Yes, Kent, it's plain for all to see that in those 15 years that you were teaching, you weren't teaching written English. But continue. People have said that the growth of the coral reefs ought to show us how old the Earth is. Really, Kent? I would have thought that the growth of the coral on the reef would only give an indication of how old the reef is. As coral is an evolved species, I wouldn't have thought that it suddenly sprung up and started growing into a reef on day one when the Earth was formed. But tell us more. Enlighten us, O wise one. With study, they discover that under certain conditions, coral grows extremely fast. Under conditions, whatever they are, they grow very slowly. So the rate of growth is very difficult to determine, to prove that it happened at a constant rate. Yes, Kent, and exactly how is that relevant? There are present examples of coral reefs still going today in the Pacific. Take the ones in the Marshall Islands, for instance, that are over 170,000 years old. In fact, there's evidence of fossilized coral reefs that go back 500 million years. But do carry on. Right after the flood, as all of the water went down, all of the decayed plant matter would have made the water very high in minerals, and decayed plant and animal life would have been high in nutrients to make anything to grow. What? Could we have that in English, please? No matter. I think I know where you're going with this. There is, of course, a slight problem with it. That being that coral tends to grow better, and therefore faster, when it's in clear water. When it's in murky water, or water with less sunlight, then it grows considerably slower. So if the water surrounding the coral was full of all sorts of various detritus, it would have been growing very slow indeed. Furthermore, why does there not appear to be any evidence of any sedimentation of this detritus being left behind on the reef?